Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. We're really excited to have you. This is our third Learn with LUWI, and we already feel like it's old hat, right? How great is that? Team LUWI is here to keep an eye on the chat, and so this is for you. We want to hear from you. We want to provide you information, so please let us know if you've got any questions. I'm going to share a few-minute overview of LUWI and where we are and when we're going to be on the market. And then Sam's going to give us Sam is our campus manager, product coordinator. She's going to give us a demonstration of LUWI. And then after that, I will introduce you to our awesome guest, which you've all been waiting for, Dr. Ina Park. Okay, as you probably all know, LUWI stands for Let Us Wear It. And it is the opposite of a condom. LUWI's not a condom. It's a finer liner. It's a hormone-free, latex-free, STI preventing contraceptive designed for women that men prefer to condoms. So we're very excited for this product. We've been working on this a while. We realize that we're not on the market yet, but you can always go to our Instagram, our Facebook, our LinkedIn, or our website and sign up for our newsletter to be the first to know when we do hit the market. You probably know that our journey to LUWI is personal for me. After surviving divorce and breast cancer, I looked for something on the market that I could use for hormone-free contraception and was shocked that this was the situation, right? Lots of condom options and zero for women. Really interesting. This environment, this industry has not changed in so long, and I don't know if we've ever seen this level of stagnation in any other field of medicine, let alone any other category. So it's pretty interesting. It's time for a new, modern, updated option that women can use to have agency, right? To be in control of their body's health and their health and well-being. So LUWI is easy to use. It is latex-free, so it transfers heat and sensation, and it's non-constricting, and no unrolling is needed to use it in it or on it, right? So it's very versatile, and it's equally as effective for the protection against STIs and for contraception. So why now? Well, obviously, why not now, right? There's never a bad time to be able to offer an option for women to be able to have agency and control. We're really all about advocacy, especially given the STI rates that are predominantly impacting women. And Dr. Park is going to share more about that. I know a big report just came out today or yesterday. And we also have this really interesting situation where in 1992, less than 2% of women owned a vibrator, and today, more than 70% of women own a vibrator. So we see that women are eager for an option. And we recently were on University of Florida's campus with Dr. Lori Mintz and gave her students a survey, and this is what they said. So pretty exciting stuff. LUWI exists to provide protection that feels good, to provide an option that is a health equity option that enables over-the-counter access to safety and enables agency and body autonomy for women and other receivers. So now it's time for the fun part. So Dr. Park is a nationally recognized leader in the fight to reduce STI stigma and improve sexual health. She is a professor at UCSF and the principal investigator at CAPTC of the California Prevention and Training Center. Her influence extends through her work with the CDC and her acclaimed book, Strange Bedfellows, in which she shares her deep clinical knowledge with a side of laugh out loud funny. She is very funny, you'll see. Her career is rooted in sexual health education and policy. Her expertise has been transformative for both the public and healthcare sectors. She's also, as if she has any more time in her day, the communications chair for the STI and HIV 2025 World Congress that will be held in Montreal in July of 2025. Dr. Park lives in San Francisco with her husband and two sons and loves Thai food. I'm pretty sure. I think we both actually love Thai food when we had dinner last together. So thank you, Ina. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Lisa, before we get started, I wasn't sure, were we gonna have a demo of LUWI first or
Oh, great. I'm sorry, Sam. I
no, it's
forgot
okay.
that. Yeah,
No,
please.
you're good. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I wanted to start off by showing everyone the infamous sparkle vulva, the Louis sparkle vulva that we use as a demonstration model. So here
I
you
love
can
this thing, by
see
the way. Can I just say that I own one and it's fantastic?
we love to hear that. It's in high demand. So here you can see the labia majora, the labia minora, the clitoris being represented, and the inside of this is the vaginal canal. So when you have your Louis, all you have to do is start to tuck it in just a little bit into the vagina, and then push it the rest of the way in, and then it's in place and providing additional STI protection on the vulva or surrounding surface area if you're using it for anal sex. So, does anyone need to see that again? I'll do it. I'll do it one more time. So actually, it could be worn in it or on it. That would have been demonstrated as in it, but you could also just put it on and then push it in from with a penis guiding it. So,
Awesome.
okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. That was super.
Yes.
So my first question, I heard a story, you shared a story when you were at Berkeley, and I think that was your aha moment, that this was your path for your dream job. So I know many think that, well, your name Ina rhymes with vagina, so maybe that made it very natural for you, but maybe share with us a little bit about how you came to be where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I do think, with the name that rhymes with vagina, something was predestined for me in this world. And so I'm glad I'm here. But yes, I was a sexual health peer educator at UC Berkeley, and I dressed up as a giant condom and was doing demos with a banana and a condom, you know what I mean, in front of hundreds of people. And I actually wrote about that for my medical school, essay. And I think that's what got me into medicine. And that's why I'm here. So yeah, that was really a big turning point for me because I was always that person that people came to and talked, came to the dorm room and said, "Oh my God, this happened to me. This is my relationship issue. This is what's going on for me." And I said, this is actually something I could do as a career. And I actually formalized it by becoming a peer educator and then decided to keep it going by going to medical school. And then, that turned into a career in sexual health. And here I am.
Wow, awesome. So you weren't pre-med at Berkeley?
Well, I was actually thinking about becoming a marine biologist. And then,
Okay.
yes, and then actually I was working in a marine biology lab, and the lab manager, he said, this is all great. Marine biology is fun, but that HIV is a huge problem and maybe you should work on that. He said, you seem like a pretty smart person, and why don't you do something that's really going to help humanity? And it made me think, I think I'm going to actually apply to medical school. So I didn't apply to medical
Wow.
school right away after college, but and I'm glad I didn't pick marine biology, but I still love the ocean and love to snorkel and all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you reached out to him to say, hey, thank you?
I should have. I actually haven't. I should.
I wonder, do you think he's still around?
Yeah, he probably is. I should do that and say, you did me a favor.
Yeah, for sure. He'd be so proud. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, well, good. We know a big report came out yesterday,
Yep.
and so we've seen a little bit of the statistics, and I think, well, let me just back up first. We here at LUWI, we always refer to these as STIs, right?
Yeah.
As I think you do as well. But so oftentimes in our conversation, people say, wait, is this an STD, or wait, what's an STD? So
Mhm.
maybe can you help us understand the difference?
Yeah, totally. So it's fine to use either term, first of all. What we're not using anymore is that old term VD or venereal disease, you know what I mean? Which
Hmm.
started off actually, in the 18 and then we finally got rid of it in the 70s. But sexually transmitted infections, really that's the majority of the STIs that are out there. Some things like HPV, for example, that are asymptomatic infections that go away on their own, don't actually cause disease, right? So
Hmm.
it's not incorrect to say sexually transmitted disease, because a lot of STIs can actually cause disease, but so many of them just cause silent infection. And so I think the more sort of medically accurate term is to say STI. some people feel like it's less stigmatizing, you know what I mean, to say STI versus STD. I
Mhm.
mean, personally, you don't want either of them, right? But I say whatever, terminology you want to use, but STI is sort of what is being
The more
used, I think, by
modern
most
term.
more modern and more young
Yeah.
people, I think, are using that term today.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So back to that report that came out yesterday,
Yeah,
we understand that the rates, the STI rates have gone up and up and up, but they just keep going up year after year. I think with the exception of maybe during COVID, we had a bit of a drop,
right.
right?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, but 1 in 4 among certain segments of the population. So how can you help us understand what is so different today versus say 2000?
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of things are different. If we want to take it back, you know what I mean, to the year 2000, syphilis had almost been eliminated in the US. So 80% of the counties, it was either in 1999 or 2000, 80% of the counties in the US reported 0 cases of syphilis. But then in the past, like 5 years, there have been double-digit increases in syphilis every year. So I have to say, so if you don't mind me just, dropping a few numbers down here, I mean, I will say that after seeing years of double-digit increases, especially among gay men, we actually got some kind of good news yesterday. Now, I'm not going to say things are better because syphilis did get worse, but it only got worse by about 1% as opposed to double-digit increases. So I'm saying, Lisa, that's a win because it's not getting bad as quickly as it was before, okay?
Mhm.
And I have to say something really interesting is happening with gonorrhea, in that for 2 years in a row, we've seen actually declines in gonorrhea. And you mentioned COVID. So during COVID, the first, 3 months, so like from March to June, and a lot of people did studies on this, people kind of locked it down in the sense that they actually reduced their number of partners, and because of social distancing, weren't having as much sex. And then there was a national testing shortage. So all the
Mhm.
swabs and the liquid, for the STI tests, we didn't have any of them because everything was being used for COVID. So all of those things meant that we had less STIs, but everything sort of came back and then some, except
Mhm.
now we're seeing actually continued declines for 2 years in a row in gonorrhea. Chlamydia never really caught up from COVID, and we're finally seeing a little bit less, I guess it's less bad and less of an epidemic with syphilis. And for the first time, we've actually seen declines in gay men, which, in the most infectious types of syphilis. So, Lisa, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm going to tell you there's still over 2.4 million STIs, bacterial STIs. I'm not even counting HPV or herpes. And so I don't think we can't stop what we're doing. We still need to double down on actually promoting prevention and testing. We can't, just relax at this point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
half of these STIs are affecting young people under the age of 25. So let's start with that. We can't stop trying to protect ourselves
Yeah.
just because things are
Absolutely.
getting a little bit, just because things are getting a little bit better, I mean, I'm
Right. It's a
happy.
false hope, yeah, to be
Yeah,
letting
but
it go
I'm
away.
happy, but let's not celebrate and say, oh, okay, let's just, stop using barriers. Let's stop trying to protect ourselves.
Yeah, so you're seeing because of the increase, you're seeing a decline in usage of protection.
Well, so I'm saying let's not do that. But there's definitely
Yeah.
been, just so anecdotally, so I see patients at the STI clinic in San Francisco, and I will just say the overall trend among all my patients is that folks do not want to use barriers. They're
Mhm.
sick of it, especially my gay patients are not interested, but a lot of my female patients as well, my female heterosexual patients, they don't want to use barriers, or they don't feel like they can negotiate that with their partners, and their partners don't want to use barriers. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're using, an IUD or an implant or some other long-acting reversible contraception. So they just feel like, well, pregnancy's off the table, so I'm just going to if I get an STI, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thus the huge demand for LUWI, right? We get it. Well, so it sounds like testing is really key.
It is important.
We're on these campuses often. I mean, it's mostly Sam, but me too. I've got, 2 kids on 2 different
Yeah.
campuses.
Yeah.
And what we do hear this trend, you know, when we're at these sampling of, or not sampling events, these demonstration events on campus, people saying, oh, they're not saying I got tested. It's like not the norm thing. And
Right.
so, in fact, we've actually heard that a couple of women reporting that the guy that they're hooking up with gave them a fake test report after they said, "Hey, have you been tested?" And they found it on Google. It was like the very first one, and you know,
Right.
just changed the name on it. I mean, you know, obviously all the more reason women need to have a product that prioritizes their well-being. So what do we do with that information?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you mentioned that to me, Lisa, and that was so disturbing, but honestly not surprising, right? With the power of the internet, right, is that we can have access to, you know, all kinds of content, but people manipulate that content to create fake news. And in this case, you know, like creating false STI testing results. So I don't want to say that you can't trust people because, you know, obviously you can trust people sometimes, but I think you have to take agency and you have to take control of your own sexual health. You know what I mean? You cannot necessarily rely on somebody else to say, okay, well, they're covered. And so I don't need to do anything active myself. So you know, that's kind of the takeaway message that I'm saying from this. I see, you know, a lot of people kind of just giving up saying, well, I can't get my partner to wear a condom. So, you know, I'm just not going to worry about it, or I'm just going to get tested. And it's like this sort of being passive about it. And I think I would like to encourage people to take sort of a more active role in protecting their sexual health. And that includes testing. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I hope someday that it'll include as well, like, you know what I mean? This finer liner, that's something that you can actually place inside the vagina, which we don't have right now.
yeah, absolutely. And then, so in terms of the cost of tests, I mean, I think that's a big expense, right? I mean,
It
we
can
see
be. I
some
mean,
of these, like mylabbox.com and evie.com, are those things that you refer to your patients if they want to be doing something at home, they can't get to you?
you know, I don't typically, you know, and I don't promote any, there's so many people marketing
Mm,
and marketing tests directly to consumers. They typically cost, you know, at least, you know, over $100, and some of them are upwards of
mm,
200 or $300. And so there are actually a lot of folks trying to promote free testing programs, such as, you know, takemehome.org, but they're only in limited markets, you know, and there's a free program in the state of Alabama. So there are people offering free testing. And then, of course, people who are enrolled in universities, a lot of university, you know, student health programs basically, you know, offer free testing. And then obviously there's, you know, sexual health clinics. So I say, you know, I try to have people find those resources or Planned Parenthoods and those types of things
sure.
before trying to go to a direct to consumer site, just because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do
Hopefully that's
think in
changing.
general, though, more testing is better. And I do want to encourage people to test. And I don't think that that's happening enough either, Lisa. And
Hmm.
part of that is I think that there should be greater access to low cost testing and also home-based testing.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think also one of the challenges is that so many of these, maybe you can talk about this, are asymptomatic. And
Yes.
so one maybe doesn't know. And
Yeah.
I think at least from what we are hearing and reading, that it's that second STI, because the first was asymptomatic, that then wreaks havoc on their mental health.
Yeah. I mean, so that, you know, a lot of things you've brought up a lot of issues there. So first, especially when you have an infection like chlamydia and gonorrhea in the cervix, majority of those are going to be asymptomatic. So the only way you will have any idea that you have it is
Mhm.
by getting a test. But the issue is that even if you have a completely silent infection, it can actually still cause scarring of your, you know, of your tubes. It can cause problems with fertility or ectopic pregnancy later. You know, these are really, really devastating outcomes. So my point is that just because you feel fine, obviously, you know, you need to get tested. And I know folks as well who are actually doing this type of work in sexual health who've actually experienced infertility or pelvic inflammatory disease from a silent, you know what I mean, chlamydia infection. And then
10 years prior or 15
yeah,
years
no, yeah,
prior.
exactly. And
Yeah,
then felt
exactly.
inspired to do this work because of that. But that's not an
Mm,
outcome
Wow.
anymore.
interesting. Yeah.
And Sam, did you come back on because there's a question?
Yes, there is a question. So in the chat, it says, "Hi, Ina, your book has been on my Goodreads list to read. I saw a recent headline that another STI has been discovered. I think it was a rash type. Is that a true new STI or a variation of another type?"
So they said it was a, what is it called?
Uh, the name of the STI was not mentioned. It was described as a rash type of STI.
Hmm.
Are you familiar
I'm,
on which one's being referenced here?
I mean, the most common, well, so there's been a lot of different articles in the lay press about syphilis, and I'm wondering if, yeah, it might have been Mpox, monkeypox, which was
Mm.
it was formerly called monkeypox, and now it's called Mpox. But that could be what it was. That happened actually in the summer of 2022 and came out of a bunch of sort of gay circuit parties in Europe. But folks brought back this infection, and it spread very quickly through especially communities of men who have sex with men and transgender folks who have sex with men. And luckily, there's both a vaccine and a treatment. So, we had a huge outbreak, and luckily that's sort of calmed down. There's still a few cases around here and there, but it's not nearly to the level that it was in the summer of 2022. So yeah, it is new. It is new because
Okay.
previously it was really only seen in Africa, and we had never actually had a big outbreak like this in the United States before. Sexually
Okay.
transmitted outbreak
Yes.
at
Okay.
time. Yeah, so I see in the chat that yes, so there is, so this is not a new infection. There's actually a fungal infection that has been demonstrated to be sexually transmitted. So, but it's not a new organism. It's just that
Mm.
the sexual transmission of this fungus is new. And so it can be treated with antifungal drugs that we already have, but it can be very difficult to treat. And so, and that's the same thing with Mpox. Like, it wasn't really a new virus. It existed before, but the thing is that the fact that it was sort of sexually transmitted and then being spread sexually is new.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. That makes a
But
lot
so can I just,
of
Sam, that just brings up something really important, is that, so there's, different bugs out there, right? There's funguses and parasites and viruses and bacteria. And the problem is that we don't know when the next sexually transmitted infection is going to pop up. Like, I wasn't expecting Mpox to, be a sexually transmitted infection, and then it just was. And I didn't think that this, obscure fungus was going to be showing up as a sexually transmitted infection. So I'm just saying that I don't want to make people paranoid. I want people to have sex. But the point is that, it's not a bad idea to use barriers. I keep telling my patients,
Yeah,
to use
that's
them, and
exactly.
people don't like barriers because they feel like they're not fun. So
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's the big issue here. We know, a lot of people think, oh, there's only 8 STIs and I can get a vaccine for 3 of them, and
yeah,
I'm
right.
not worried about these others. Well, there's so many more. I mean, I don't know how
There's so
many there are.
many.
Those are just maybe the ones that get most of the press or get covered in the news.
Yeah,
I don't know.
there's 30 different, types of viruses, bacteria, parasites that can be sexually transmitted. Just saying.
Okay, yeah, well, good to know. Now so there's so much excitement, right? When we're on campus, when we're with others, when we're talking to launch partners, there's so much excitement for LUWI, and people just can't wait to get samples. And obviously, there are several reasons why the demand is growing, but I guess we know it's going to be a game changer. We really are working to make sure that everybody's aware of it so that it can be in everybody's hands when we launch. But from your point of view, from you and your colleagues on the clinical side, why do you think this will be so valuable and be so exciting for people to get?
Well, Lisa, let me start with something depressing. I mean, there's just nothing out there, you know what I mean, that can be used for vaginal sex for the, by the receptive partner for vaginal sex or for anal sex. So, and the condom really hasn't changed. The male condom or the penile condom hasn't changed for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just nothing. And so it's time for something. I mean, as because, you lived and breathed this forever, is that the female condom or the internal condom, people say it was huge. It was like a wind sock, you know what I mean? Like a latex wind
Yeah.
sock shoved in your vagina. So nobody liked it. And now that it's prescription only, there's just nothing over the counter for receptive vaginal sex. And so, yeah, I think the time is ripe for it. It's definitely necessary. And
Yeah. So
and
timing, feel, agency. I mean, we're living in this time of advocacy, right? This is
yeah,
all
yeah,
about advocacy, and then of course this time where STI rates are even they're growing. So we need to be able to have safety and access to safety,
yeah.
right?
Well, and what I like is that making it fun and making about empowerment, I think is really important.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. That's what we think too. One of the other things that when we had Karis on our
Yeah,
Learn
I
with
saw that. Yeah.
Louie, yeah, she said that Gen Zs are just bombarded. She said 1,000 times a day they see these penises. Everywhere there are penises. And obviously Louis is versatile. You can be putting it on a penis, you can put it in a vagina, in an anal canal, right? But we do want to promote vulvas. And so we're hoping that we can make vulva mainstream. I'm wondering, you've been in practice a while. How have you seen the shift from no one knowing that word to now today people saying, oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that term.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we still have a long way to go though, Lisa. Okay. Can we just say like, I still, but I feel like a lot of that has come out of as well, like this recognition around gender not being binary, you know what I mean? So people will then refer to people with a vulva or people with a vagina, you know what I mean? And so I feel like as well, even though we still have a long way to go, that in some places sex education has gotten better and people now know the terms for vulva, vagina, they know
Mhm.
what a clitoris is. I feel like that is a huge change, like that I
From when
see
you started,
from when
from
I
when you
started
started,
this, just
yeah,
from when I was a kid and what I learned. All I saw
yeah,
were the terrifying pictures. And I feel like my kids are getting a little bit of a more holistic and they know what a vagina is, they know what a vulva is. And I'm not saying that's just because I'm their mother. I'm saying they're getting a better education about that. But I
yeah,
do think that that's interesting that, yeah, I mean, the whole dick pic thing, right, is
yeah,
real. I
yeah.
mean, I don't know if people are sending vulva pics, you know what I
Well,
mean?
it'd be like the
Because
dick pic, like the vulva vid.
I know
The vulva video, right? I hope not anyway. Yeah,
right.
I know. Well, okay. So that means sex education is getting better.
I mean, in some places, yes, but I don't know. Obviously, we've had a huge, political shift, and I have no idea what that's going to do for any of this.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I just think in terms of being,
Conversation has
yeah, in
shifted.
conversation and in terms of, being empowered around your sexual health, protecting yourself, getting tested, these are the things that you have control over, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what's going on, you know what I mean, politically around you. But yeah, so and I just think that like right now we need more access, do you know what I mean, to options
Yeah.
for
Right. That's
everybody
why we're doing
regardless
what we're doing.
regardless of
Yeah.
gender. Yeah,
Yeah.
for everybody
It's
regardless of gender and whatever you're engaging in types of sex.
and it's less taboo, right? I
Yeah,
mean, just like the stat about the vibrators, right? It's
right.
something that people are now talking about, whereas before they didn't. I think in the beginning it was more shame based.
Right. Right. And I mean, there's still a lot of shame, but there's still a lot of shame, but social media for all of its, detriments, actually, I feel like has been really helpful about that. There are so
Mm,
many good sex positive content creators and influencers out there. The language is different. Like what my kids, um, see on social media, do you know what I mean, is around sex is generally more positive
hmm.
and more inclusive around LGBTQ identity. I mean, all of that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of positive things that are coming out of social media. And we can have a whole other episode about the negative things coming out of social media, but there is a more sex positive language out there. But we still have to keep talking about it, because it's very easy to stigmatize these infections and to feel ashamed and also to blame people, what I mean, when STIs happen. But I
Hmm.
think, my take home point is that really STIs are just a consequence of being a sexually active person. So,
Yeah. I read this morning actually about Michigan. They're going to revamp their sex ed program and they're going to start with 5th grade. So
Yeah.
where do you see the best age to be able to introduce LUWI? Would that be 5th through 8th grade? Would that be high school? I mean, obviously our launch plan first starts on college campuses because,
Yeah.
they're buying condoms in bulk and handing them out for free, and they're going to be buying LUWI and handing them out for free, right? So, but we need to back into, I think, letting people know, hey, this is available. And at what age do you see that is best?
I think talking about barriers in contraception and, like all these different contraceptive options as well as like STI protection, I think it's fine to talk about those things in high school. You know what I mean? Because in middle, like I feel like when we're talking about middle school, there's a lot just about like puberty, sexual development, they start talking about consent. They're talking about gender identity. And then when you get into high school, I think people are more receptive to hearing about STIs, contraception, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And HIV prevention and all that stuff. I just think they're more sophisticated and able to handle the content, you know what I mean? That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and 5th graders are probably not hooking up, whereas high school, college kids are, right? So,
Right. I mean, I don't think that, you can talk about the proper names for body parts, right? In elementary school. I don't think
mhm.
that, but they're not ready to hear about condoms
It
probably.
sounds like there's a
Yeah.
lot of groundwork that needs to be laid before you
Yeah.
get to the barrier conversation to fill
Yeah,
in
right,
those
exactly.
gaps.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
have some questions pouring in, so I'm gonna read some out to you. A question that I have for Dr. Ina Park, you guys were just talking about the stigma and the shame around sex in general. How can, I guess, society move away from, I mean, obviously people don't strive to contract STIs, so how do
Right.
you balance having a shame-free and stigma-free approach to that while also encouraging patients to be as healthy as possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I am always towing a very fine line there. So I will say that like obviously it's not fun and it's not like shouldn't feel like, oh, this is just normal that I have an STI, but I have to say that this is actually a natural consequence of being a sexually active person. And so when I talk about STIs, I always sort of frame it in this is a consequence of sexual activity that happens to almost every person, especially when it comes to HPV. But then I immediately want to turn it around to say, yes, this is probably going to happen to you. You may not even realize it, right? And because you may have an asymptomatic infection, you may get rid of it. But then here's what you can do to actually control it, right? So you can protect yourself, you can get tested, you can get vaccinated. You know what I mean? So I'm always giving both messages together as opposed to saying like STIs are bad, which is the message that I got when I was, in high school. STIs are bad, your junk is going to fall off or, look terrible or
Right.
whatever. And there was nothing else, right? So now I'm always giving the message like STIs are serious for your health, right? You want to take care of them, you want to get tested, and they're natural. They happen. Just like you get a cold, you go out, you walk around in the world, you go to a party, you get a cold, just a virus, same thing. And then also, what can I do? What control do I have? And so I'm always trying to present those messages together.
It sounds like the responsibility doesn't end after the sexual encounter of
Right.
taking those precautions, because like you just listed, like there's so much you can do afterwards of getting tested so that you don't have an asymptomatic infection
Right.
laying dormant for a while.
Yeah.
There's a related question in the Q&A that says, what are ways I can tell my young adult kids about the seriousness of STIs without scaring them? There's an ick factor to work around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and that's funny because when I was writing my book, it was the same thing. Like my editor was said, how we talk about this book we have to be careful because there is an ick factor around STIs.
Mm.
And so I think just as I said, like give that message. So, there's a lot, you're starting to have sex, you're interested in having sex. That's great. I just want you to know STIs are serious. They can actually cause real harm. And so it's really important for you to get tested. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is the other thing, I don't know, how deep this person can get with their kids, but if someone tells you that they have an STI, like if your partner says, I have an STI, the best response is to just say, thank you for telling me. You know what I mean? Like, I think what I want to say to young people and what I say to my own teenage son is that because you're sexually active and I want you to be sexually active, I want you to expect that this could happen. And I want you to handle it in a way, you know what I mean, that preserves other people's feelings. And if you get an STI, there's no one to blame necessarily, right? It's just something, it's a consequence of being sexually active. So I think,
Well, I mean, really, they're
yeah,
not set up for success.
right.
I mean, without LUWI on the market, they really aren't set up for success, right? We understand that condoms are desensitizing and that's the only option and it's 100 years old. So
Right.
it is really hard. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Sam, I think it's okay to tell the truth. Like STIs are serious and they really can cause harm. And especially like untreated syphilis, it, literally can cause damage to the brain, to the heart. I mean, it's not a joke, right? At the same time, there's things that you can do about it. So I think, it's okay to give a serious message, but also give an empowering message.
I really appreciate that. I know that we're about to run out of time,
Yeah.
and there's a few things in the Q&A that I'm going to try to zip through, and then you guys can answer um, how you would like to. One of them is not a question, but just hate so much that there's a labeling around women being promiscuous
Yeah.
when they have an STI, and then when a man does, it's brushed off and he's considered a player, and it contributes to the idea that men are less gross and it's imbalanced.
Yeah. That is so true. And just so you know, people can have sex with the first partner and they can get an STI immediately. Would you call that person promiscuous? Like that's something that this whole slut shaming thing is something that I actually talk with my patients about a lot because depending on what sexual networks you're in, do you know what I mean? I've had patients who've had 20 partners in 3 months and get no STI, and people who've had sex with one person and get multiple STIs. So it's really not about the number of people that you sleep with. Not at all.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, the other two things in the questions that we have are, in your best case scenario, what can dating apps and sites be doing to help mitigate the spread of STIs? Feels like they could have the email list of people who could benefit from this info.
Oh my God, I love that. Can I tell you why I love this question? So
Please.
yeah, I have these really good friends who started this organization called Building Healthy Online Communities, and they have every app that's directed towards gay and gender diverse people is on board, and they push out prevention messages like how to find an Mpox vaccine, how to find an STI clinic, but Tinder is not on board. And so
Wow.
so they've been having a hard time.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. So some apps are really on board. And actually there are apps for folks who, identify more as like straight hetero folks. But who will push out prevention messages. But it's interesting that the dating app owners that are primarily sort of focused on gay communities totally took this on and they are pushing out prevention messages. So I actually feel like every dating app, as a responsible business owner, should be pushing out these messages in their app and using their platform to actually promote prevention.
Wow. So Sam, new LUWI launch partner,
Yeah,
Tinder,
that's what
right?
Marissa just said in the chat. She said,
When
I
I
feel a
become
LUWI partnership coming on.
When I become queen of the world, I'm gonna make all the dating
A
app owners.
requirement.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean, they should. They know they're contributing to STIs. They should do
Yeah.
something to help.
I feel like that would be such a great way to combat the shame or stigma, because they would just be normalizing having healthy
Yes.
conversations about consent and about having, I mean, something that I've mentioned this before, my high school health teacher said to us was, if you are uncomfortable asking a partner when the last time they got tested was, or if they have any STIs, then you shouldn't be having sex. And that has been something that's constantly in every situation come up to my head. And I've been like, okay, like I should not be engaging in any of this behavior if I can't even instigate this conversation to make sure that I'm protecting myself.
Yeah.
So I feel like normalizing that the business owners of those apps are in such an incredible position to be normalizing those healthy conversations
Mhm.
that they have a role in. And one last question in the chat. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was going to ask Ina about the menopausal market and how that, when women go through menopause, we know that the mucosal lining is thinning. And so
Yeah.
does that cause them to be more susceptible to catching an STI?
Well, so they're less susceptible in the sense that there's less STIs in our age group. I'm that age group now, you know what I mean? So but if you are sleeping with someone who has an STI, because with menopause, the tissue of the vagina gets traumatized more easily, then if you do get exposed to something, then you are more likely to actually catch it, because that's why lubricants and things like that are really important. Because you can cause a lot of little micro traumas with sex that when you're 20 and you have a lot more lubrication, and you have a lot more estrogen around, doesn't happen as easily. But
Okay,
but
got it.
Sam, can I just say that, yeah, I don't want to like normalize STIs and say like, oh, STIs are normal, but I'm saying like we need to normalize having the conversation, and we need to make it as easy to talk about sex as it is to have sex. You know what I mean? Because right now it's easier to have sex than to actually talk about it.
Yeah, that's definitely the conversation that needs to be normalized.
Yeah.
The last question that I see in the chat is, this may be silly, but nothing silly about staying healthy. Are there risks for monogamous couples that we
Mhm.
can look out for? What about managing the microbiome and gut
Mhm.
health?
Yeah. So, you mean, are there risks just for monogamous couples in terms of STIs? I mean, the thing is, even folks in monogamous relationships, HPV can enter the picture because it's pretty much universal. Like 80% of people will get HPV by the time they're 50. And so, I would say that even if you're in a monogamous relationship, you should get vaccinated for HPV. I mean, hopefully many people are doing that as, preteens and, or as young adolescents before they become adults. But, the thing is that even people in monogamous relationship, as everybody knows, sometimes that relationship becomes open on one end, and you know what I mean? People stray and step out of the relationship. So even when people tell me, like, if they're young and they say, I'm 23 years old and I think my partner's not with other partners, I say, you know what, we'll get an STI test just in case. And guess what? Sometimes they're
Mm.
positive, and people didn't realize that they had an open relationship, but they actually do.
Or
So
can STIs be latent and then,
yes,
okay,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Right.
thought
And some
too.
people can say,
So,
oh, I've been with this person. We haven't had sex with anybody else for 3 months. How can I possibly have an STI? Well, you might have come to the relationship with an STI and you didn't even know.
yeah, exactly. Well, and what about monogamous couples with the vaginal biome? Because I know
Yeah.
that the semen is a 7.0, so it's much more alkaline than
Oh,
the
yeah.
vaginal biome. And that acidic level is really what helps the vagina stay healthy and be bacteria free and
Right.
be normally able to fight, bacteria that may exist. So when the semen is there and the balance is off, what happens?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that I talk about in the book, is that the vaginal microbiome for some people is very fragile, in the sense that like every time someone gets their period, every time someone gets semen in the vagina, they get an STI, or not an STI, but they get bacterial vaginosis. So
Mm.
I'm sorry, my battery's running a little bit low because I had to move my computer, but yeah, so I think even people in monogamous relationship can get bacterial vaginosis, and sometimes that means you have to take a break and actually use barriers, and not have semen in the vagina for the vagina microbiome to
And
heal.
also, if anybody is interested in investing in LUWI, we still have room on our round. So it's been really exciting, the progress we've made. We've completed 9 out of the 13 required tests, and the others are going to be beginning soon. So we're going to be pretty close to hitting the market. So it's exciting. So I would say hello@getluwi.com, just like Marissa said, and let us know who you are and what you need, and we'll go from there. Okay, well, in closing, thank you so much, Ina. Loved having you here. Appreciate all your knowledge. It's so important to know this stuff and to help educate people so they know what's going to happen, what they can do to help themselves. And let's go, LUWI.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.